Hey everyone, my name is Harrison DeBose, legislative intern at Texas Watch, and I'll be the host for this episode of Texas Tells. On today's episode, we'll be talking about an insurance scheme known as Swoop and Settle. We'll hear from our executive director at Texas Watch, Ware Wendell, and he'll go into depth about what Texans need to know not only about Swoop and Settle, but also House Bill 1793 by Dallas Representative Julie Johnson, which is up for a vote this session. We'll also hear from Rayza Dominguez, a victim of Swoop and Settle, who was 18 at the time of her accident. This is Texas Tells.
Editor's note. Since the recording of this podcast, HB 1793 was passed out of the Texas House and it's on its way to the Texas Senate. Now here is the Swoop and Settle podcast.
So what is Swoop and Settle? Let's imagine that you're in a car at a stoplight. Your seatbelt is fastened and you're just waiting for that red light to change. And then out of nowhere, you get rear-ended by someone speeding, not paying attention, and looking at their phone. You exchange information, and you know it isn't your fault, so you think that you have nothing to worry about. The at-fault driver's insurance adjuster takes down information about the damage to your car. At this point, you're starting to feel some pain from the wreck, but you haven't been to a doctor yet. You haven't taken your car to the shop yet either. It's only been a few hours since this all happened. Then the next day, their insurance company calls you and offers you a settlement. You agree to it over the phone because you need the money. You have to get back to work and it sounds good enough at the moment. Now let's fast forward a few days. You go to the doctor and they recommend MRIs, X-rays, and for you to see specialists. The costs are adding up. You end up needing more money from insurance than you had agreed to on that phone call. So you call them and say, hey, that amount wasn't enough. Sounds easy, right? Wrong. That's all you get. You have signed away your rights to any future claims beyond that initial amount. You have released your legal claims, and there's nothing you or any lawyer can do about it now. That exact situation happened to Rayza Dominguez. She was 18 years old at the time of her wreck and works in childcare. Here's her story.
I was actually working that day. I was on my break. I had just gone to the store with my sister. We were at the light right around the corner from my job. This lady, she was just on her phone and she just was going very fast. I believe she was going about 50 miles when she hit me from behind. I was stopped at a red light. Right as soon as that happened, the light turned green. So I got off my car and I was being very cautious. And I just told her, okay, well, now that I have your information, we can pull over to the side and we can talk and we can discuss what's going to happen next. But accident happened on January 21st, which was a Monday, and on January 23rd, which was a Wednesday, less than 2 days after the accident, I spoke to them, and she had offered me $1,000, I guess, to settle the claim, and I thought it was for the doctor's visits.
Here's an excerpt from that call.
This is a telephone release for your bodily injury claim. This release does not address any property damage you may have regarding this incident. We have reached a full and final agreement for all claims and demands in the amount of $1,000. Is that correct?
Yes.
In return for the $1,000, you have agreed to release any and all personal injury claims against our insured. Ms. Dominguez, do you represent that you are the person with the authority to enter into this release?
Yes.
Do you understand that you are voluntarily and forever releasing any and all of your injury claims arising out of this accident, whether known or unknown?
Yes.
Do you understand and agree that this verbal recorded release will be valid and enforceable as if you had signed a written release document?
Yes.
Is this acceptable to you?
Due to a court case, Gilbert v. Fitz, that agreement you made over the phone is enforceable by law. You have no legal recourse. You can't get any more help from the responsible party's insurance. And now you are stuck with the bill, even though it wasn't your fault. You can just imagine how she feels. Betrayed, disrespected, tricked. And that's why Dallas Representative Julie Johnson has proposed House Bill 1793. Far too many Texans have been mistreated by their insurance companies, and they've had enough. So what exactly is House Bill 1793, and how can it help? Listen in as Representative Julie Johnson explains her bill to the House Insurance Committee.
House Bill 1793 prohibits insurance companies from securing oral releases right after an insurance claim. It's called Swoop and Settle. And right now, the practice induces injured motorists into settling and releasing their legal claims for an amount that is insufficient to compensate their losses prior to the time when the losses are even known.
So Representative Johnson's bill seeks to eliminate that key element of Swoop and Settle, the oral release. But what's so wrong with this tactic of settling claims over the phone? Let's hear Executive Director Ware Wendell share his own experience of a car crash he was in to committee members.
I was T-boned last year. My car was totaled. Just the adrenaline dump that you're dealing with when you suffer that kind of trauma, you're not in the right frame of mind to be talking to somebody over the phone and to be giving up your constitutional rights in the process.
Now, remember Rayza? She wasn't in the right frame of mind to become bound by this oral contract either. She had no idea that this phone call would be the be-all and end-all for help after her car had been slammed into and she had become injured. Her attorney, Lynn McCraw, describes how this situation has affected Rayza and potentially millions of other Texans before the insurance committee. Let's listen.
She was an 18-year-old senior in high school. 18-year-old senior. Involved in a car wreck, goes to the hospital. The third-party liability carrier ends up calling her, getting an oral release from her the very same day. Within 24 to 48 hours, it was right that time period. She comes to my office within 72 hours, but there is no claim for that 18-year-old high school senior, regardless of what happened to her. But it's not just about Rayza. It's happening to a lot of other people as well. Just last week, another one of our people from your district, from my district, called me. Same situation, this time a school teacher. Released her claim. I didn't know what I was doing. I was, I was hurt. I was in the hospital. I didn't know what I was doing. Ma'am, I'm sorry, I can't help you. You have orally released your claim. Progressive has abused you. Progressive has done this to you.
And this doesn't just hurt the people who are parties to the accident itself. You have the obviously affected injured victim who can't pay for their recovery because they've been stiffed by Swoop and Settle. But who else gets hurt down the line? Everyday Texans. In his testimony for House Bill 1793, Ware explains.
If you do settle for too little, now bear in mind, this may be before you've even gone to your doctor and you don't even know what your course of care is going to be. Now you don't have enough money to pay your doctor, to pay the hospital. Who ends up paying the cost of all of that? We do as the taxpayer, because now you're going to have to seek treatment probably if you don't have out-of-pocket resources through county hospitals, under charity care, or the ER. So this is good for doctors, it's good for patients, it's good for taxpayers. It's simple.
In Texas, along with the rest of the country, if you own and drive a car, you have to have insurance. That's the law. We drivers pay these companies monthly to protect us if something were to happen. But are they holding up their end of the deal? Ware describes how they aren't and how through Swoop and Settle, insurance companies are shorting everyday Texans on help when they need it the most.
They need to pay you what you're owed. That's the whole purpose of insurance. It's the whole purpose of our financial responsibility laws. We all have to have insurance to drive on our roads, and that's to protect the other person. And when the insurance company comes in and underpays these claims in a very strategic and predatory way, they're not protecting the other person. They're violating the law, in our opinion, and that's why this law will fix that.
Opponents of the bill argue that insurance companies are only trying to efficiently settle claims with the oral release strategy. But for people like Rayza Dominguez, this predatory oral agreement catches people who are stressed and strapped for cash. Currently, nearly 30 million people live in Texas, and there are over 17 million licensed drivers. That means that there are millions of Texans who are, like Rayza, victims or potential prey to the Swoop and Settle practice. If you're listening to Texas Tells, chances are you're a Texan who drives. Swoop and Settle can happen to you. So what can you do? How can you make sure this doesn't keep happening to Texans every day? Let your lawmakers know that you aren't comfortable with this shady scheme and tell them to support House Bill 1793.
If the bill is not signed into law, Texans will continue to be at risk of being preyed upon if they've been hurt through no fault of their own. Insurance companies will continue to be emboldened to engage in this activity, given that there's this court case out there that allows them to use these what are called oral releases. They can call you on the phone. If you say, yes, I'll take the money, that's the end of the road for you legally.
You can raise your voice and tell your lawmakers to look out for you and your family, not the insurance companies, at texaswatch.org/act. The link to send a letter to your lawmakers in support of House Bill 1793 can be found in the show notes. Thanks for listening to Texas Tells with your host, Harrison DeBose. If you want to find out more about Texas Watch or all of the projects we're working on, go to www.texaswatch.org. Thanks.
Texas Watch is a nonprofit, nonpartisan citizen advocacy organization that takes on corporate wrongdoers, fighting to restore responsibility and protect Texas families. We can't do this work without you. You can support us at texaswatch.org/donate. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. Please subscribe. And if you like us, please give us the highest rating wherever you get your podcast. Knowledge is power, and there is strength in numbers. Join us. Legislative advertising paid for by Texas Watch. Ware Wendell, Executive Director, 2121 East 6th Street, Suite 201, Austin, Texas, 78702.